Aloha. I watched Grandma change her behavior. My maternal grandmother had been born on a hilly Missouri farm to a single mother, graduated from 8th grade, and lived in St. Louis, where she did bookkeeping for the family's produce company. Then in the small suburban town where she lived, she got elected and served as city clerk. Late in her life, she lamented how her neighborhood was changing. Aunt Mill and Uncle Jimmy, who lived around the corner, had moved away. And when a black man moved in across the street, Grandma didn't talk to him. She talked about him. But we saw Grandma change. Daryl, the neighbor, pulled her empty trash can back to her house each week. He started helping her with other tasks, raking leaves and fixing things. Smiling, she called him by name and introduced us. That neighbor showed his gentleness. And thankfully, during those last years in her last house, I saw Grandma's own kindness. So racism is part of my family history. And I am determined that the world I live in is a more inclusive and safer place. Last year, I read several books about solutions to misinformation, racism, and violence. I heard the echoes of ancient fears and repetitive actions, but also reminders of present peace. This morning, we explore how to apply the wisdom of peacefulness in our daily lives. So what are some of the challenges of our time? We won't talk about all of them today. Who do we want to be in the world? And how can we choose the wisdom of gentleness? To be gentle is simply to be kind, amiable, tender, and calm, not severe, rough, or violent. I invite you to affirm with me this morning, I choose gentleness and create an atmosphere of peace. Together, I choose gentleness and create an atmosphere of peace. We all watched the events of Wednesday, January 6, 2021. Thousands of Americans from all 50 states attempted to stop the process to certify the presidential election. They formed a mob that violently attacked the U.S. Capitol. They came with guns, baseball bats, chemical spray, and body armor. Think about the bewildering images: wooden crosses and wooden gallows, Christian flags alongside Confederate and Nazi flags, banners with Jesus saved, Jesus saves, and QAnon. They yelled, "Take the Capitol," as they surrounded and stormed the building, breaking windows and bashing doors. Threatened elected officials pulled on gas masks and rushed to safety or hid in offices. 5 people were killed in the unrest. 4 police officers died by suicide in the months after the attack. Many others were injured, including 138 law enforcement officers. So why mention this today? What are some of the other challenges of our time? We see a rise in misinformation, racism, and violence. And yet today, we're talking about gentleness. While we're not all of us affected directly, we can join in the CSL global vision of a world where personal responsibility joins with social conscience in every area of the political, corporate, academic, and social sectors, providing sustainable structures to further the emerging global consciousness. Can the world really be changed by gentleness, or is that just too idealistic? Did you miss the rapture last week? Or the arrival of aliens? Last week, people produced all kinds of misinformation about the eclipse. We see repeated use of misinformation, conspiracies, misunderstandings, and lack of discernment. I'm a historian, and it really bothers me. Some of our fellow earthlings have powerful people telling them that they should fight. They're told, you don't have to love everyone. Not everyone is worthy. They hear, they're not our children, this is not our city, this is not our problem. And it's sad that they're so scared. Despite the denial of facts, we want to be aware of the roots of racism and violence. We see and feel racism, whether we experience it directly or not. Many current events are connected to white Christian nationalism, a dangerous belief that America is and must remain a Christian nation founded for its white Christian inhabitants, and that its laws and policies must reflect this assertion. This supremacist ideology holds that freedom is for a select few, that order applies to certain people staying in their place, and aggression may be required to maintain independence and order. They are likely to claim this is our country, not theirs, and we're willing to take it back by violence. It's both racist and misinformation. So we see and feel violence, and aggression seems to be all around us. War in Ukraine and Gaza, violence in Haiti, and biased attacks in the U.S. We give thanks that Israel has pulled some troops from Gaza 6 months after the attacks of October 7th. We're also aware that more than 4,000 deaths from gun violence have already occurred this year in the U.S. Despite its common reoccurrence, most Americans support substantive changes to gun laws. The truth is, we all want a gentler world. Karen Armstrong, the author of Fields of Blood, writes about the centuries of violence from religious extremists of all faiths. Think the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, and recent suicide attacks. Armstrong explains that our brains, bodies, faces, speech, emotions, and thoughts are connected to the survival schemes of our hunter-gatherer ancestors, the longest phase of human history. Douglas Fry, the author of The Human Potential for Peace, warns that naturalizing war and violence can help create a self-fulfilling prophecy. So are we humans a violent species, or full of the capacity of love and peacemaking? Years ago in Kansas City, actually at CSL, I heard Mindy Corcoran share her deeply painful story and her journey of healing. On Sunday, April 13th, 2014, she lost her father and son to gun violence. Her father, Bill, was a doctor. Her 14-year-old son, Reet, was active in debate and theater and an Eagle Scout. Reet's grandfather drove him to a musical audition. She took her younger son to a ball game. And when the game was canceled, she raced to hear Reet sing. As she pulled into the parking lot, she was immediately met by first responders who shared the shocking news that Bill and Reet had just been killed. Her father, her family, and pastor supported her, and she chose not revenge or despair, but a gentle response, a gentle, active response. You see, the shooter had targeted the Jewish community center, and though she was not Jewish, Mindy Corporan learned as much about Judaism as she could. She attended Shabbat services, took classes, started an interfaith youth group, and talked to mothers about healing and forgiveness. Today, she works with a diverse group of community leaders, facilitating heart-based dialogues and diversity activities. I admire Mindy Corporan's gentleness as she makes the world more peaceful. Who does the world need us to be? You see, our society needs people of wisdom and gentleness. And where is spiritual wisdom? We can rely on our intuition, supported by ancient insights on kindness. The Hebrew and Christian scriptures describe gentleness like rain, a lamb, or a caring nurse. James 3:13 asks, "Who is wise and understanding among you?" And it answers, "Show by your good life and your works are done with gentleness born of wisdom." Wisdom's fruit is said to be a listening heart, an assured heart, a contemplative heart, and a gentle heart. Gentleness is also linked to self-control, humility, patience, love, refinement, and reverence. Sometimes it takes incredible strength to be gentle. Betty Prees, the author of The Space Between Us, is not afraid of conflict. She seeks to transform it. The opportunity, she says, allows for thoughtful responses that level the playing field. When we experience conflict, our temptation can be to fight back, turn away, or freeze in place. We often think of those as flight, fight, or freeze. But a thoughtful response has the potential to change the dynamic between us and the other person. A thoughtful response is both kind and honest. After all, if we are only kind, we are permissive. If we are only honest, we are brutal. A response that is both kind and honest upholds our humanity and that of the other person. Fighting back, fleeing, or freezing stem from feelings that arise when our needs are not met. Fear, pain, despair, and anger are feelings we may all experience. And we see when negative feelings lead to negative actions. Awareness offers a pause before we react. And we can each make choices about how to respond to conflict. How do we choose gentleness? We can always begin by offering good morning, aloha, or like the local guys at the gym, how's it? Are we gentle with ourselves when we feel anger rise or sink in despair? As we notice our negative feelings, we can apply our knowledge of the mind and give thanks for our inherent compassion. We can turn our positive feelings into positive actions. You know, I know that all over the world there are groups that create learning environments for conflict resolution. I meet with a group each week to learn about Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian method of peacemaking. Another practice, compassionate or nonviolent communication, works with people who are engaged in that process. And every method requires that we see the other as worthy and deserving, even that we don't see them as other. This work reminds me that we need not be afraid of conflict, for we have tools to work with, and gentleness is a tool. Last week, my husband Keith and I watched the Merry Monarch Parade as thousands turned out to celebrate hula, Hawaiian traditions, and local culture. Children and adults were dancing, singing, cheering, and waving. I saw smiles, joy, and absolute gentleness. It felt like a celebration of inclusiveness. I think we need more parades like that. How can we choose the wisdom of gentleness? We welcome gentle conversations, gentle collaborations, and gentle lives. We may not choose each detail or outcome in our relationships, but we have the power to choose our responses. With our gentleness, we can always apply listening, contemplation, confidence, and compassion. So what does it mean to be a spiritual person? I think it means that we recognize the clash between violence and compassion. We reframe our challenges in practical terms, utilizing spiritual values. And we see gentleness as deeply powerful and wise. We recognize that going to a spiritual service or calling ourselves spiritual doesn't make us good. How do we behave in our daily lives? How do we behave when conflict occurs? Let us each remember that our gentle love is very powerful. You see, violence is a choice, indifference is a choice, social action is a choice, voting is a choice, gentleness is a choice. May the violence of the Capitol never be repeated. May we live our lives like my grandma's gentle neighbor and follow Mindy Corcoran's gentle direction. Let us affirm again, I choose gentleness and create an atmosphere of peace. Together, I choose gentleness and create an atmosphere of peace. Blessed are you who connect to the wisdom of your deeper self. Blessed are you who connect with compassion. Blessed are you who share your gentleness. Yours is the community of God. Your spiritual values are a central part of who you are and who you want to be. Use them as a guide to make your best choices. Blessed are you who create an atmosphere of peace, for you are reviving the world. God bless.